In the unfathomable expanses of the cosmos 15 billion miles away from the Earth, where the sun's light is but a distant memory, the darkness of the void begins to swallow even gravity itself. Amidst this inky blackness, a 46-year-old spacecraft named Voyager 1 persists in its relentless journey. Launched before the internet, before smartphones, and before most of us were even born, it has outlived its designers, its expectations, and perhaps even its purpose. Voyager 1, a testament to human ingenuity and ambition, was initially designed for a 5-year mission to explore the outer planets, Jupiter and Saturn. Its twin, Voyager 2, lifted off 2 weeks earlier and took a slower route to include Uranus and Neptune. However, Voyager 1, aided by a rare planetary alignment, slingshot itself into deep space, moving faster than any spacecraft before it. By 1980, its primary mission was complete, but the spacecraft kept going, past Pluto, past the heliosphere, into the unknown. It entered interstellar space in 2012, becoming the first human-made object to escape the sun's influence. From that point on, Voyager 1 has been floating in pure darkness, recording data from a realm where no solar wind blows, no planets orbit, and no help can ever reach it. Its onboard instruments, many long since shut down to conserve power, still capture magnetic fields and cosmic rays. It is quite literally drifting beyond the known world, running on nuclear decay and outdated code. And yet it continues to speak, barely, quietly, but consistently, until now. One of the most iconic images in the history of space exploration was taken by Voyager 1 in 1990, a photo of Earth from nearly 4 billion miles away, dubbed the pale blue dot. That photograph was the last it would ever take. After that, NASA shut off its cameras permanently to conserve energy. Since then, the spacecraft has operated blind, guided only by its programming and memory, a memory with a capacity smaller than the average calculator today. As of now, only a few scientific instruments remain online. Most have been powered down. The rest of the system runs on less electricity than it takes to run a light bulb. Even its signal is weaker than 1/1,000,000,000th of a watt. So faint that by the time it reaches Earth, it requires a 230-foot wide dish just to detect. But something has changed. In 2023, a transmission arrived that looked normal until it wasn't. Not corrupted, not broken, just wrong. It contained fragments of data that didn't belong, signatures that no instrument on board Voyager was capable of generating, sequences that didn't match any known output. And what was more strange, no one at NASA seemed eager to talk about it. The official story says it was a simple error, that Voyager 1 was accidentally transmitting data through an inactive onboard computer, that engineers simply rerouted the system back to a functioning processor and everything returned to normal. But behind the scenes, it took NASA months to issue the right command, not because of technical difficulty, but because the transmission kept changing. Engineers noted inconsistencies in the data, structural anomalies that didn't resemble malfunctions. Some bits were too organized, too refined, as if they were inserted. Voyager 1, remember, cannot receive new software. It cannot rewrite itself. And yet, buried within its faint whispers were blocks of code that seemed to have logic, purpose, even formatting. What confused analysts most was this. The data was not coming from Voyager's sensors. It wasn't thermal, magnetic, or positional. It was something else. Something the spacecraft had never been programmed to observe, something it had never been told to send. As pressure mounted and external researchers began asking questions, NASA's public statements remained vague. Anomalous data, they called it, a software routing issue. But experts in radio signal analysis who examined the publicly available stream noticed something buried deeper. An oscillation, not noise, not compression artifact, a pattern, a tone. It pulsed gently at a fixed frequency, like a musical note held in perfect balance, repeated with precision over a duration of hours. When mapped into audio format, the tone became eerily harmonious, structured in a way that defied statistical randomness. But perhaps the most haunting question remains: who was that signal meant for? Voyager was never meant to listen. It had no receiver, no ear, and yet its antenna had reoriented slightly, but enough to matter. Enough to raise the question that NASA won't answer. Did Voyager 1 send its final transmission on its own, or did something ask it to? While NASA publicly treated the anomaly as a glitch, engineers reviewing the raw data began noticing something they couldn't ignore. The patterns embedded in the transmission weren't just repeating, they were adaptive. Sequences of numbers appeared to be referencing physical constants. But at a resolution Voyager 1's aging instruments couldn't possibly measure. Some of these values matched known cosmic benchmarks. The gravitational constant, the Hubble parameter, even fine structure calculations that govern atomic behavior, but with decimal precision several orders higher than Voyager's detection limit. That meant only one thing. The data didn't originate from Voyager. It had passed through Voyager. Somehow the probe had become a relay, a messenger delivering data it was never meant to hold. But if that was true, if the signal wasn't from the spacecraft itself, then the next logical question was terrifying. Who or what sent it through Voyager, and why? It was no longer about an aging machine experiencing interference. It was about an intelligent decision somewhere in the void to use humanity's longest-running eye in space as a carrier. And it had succeeded. Then came the moment no one wanted to talk about: the silence. Voyager 1 for the first time in its history went completely dark. For 12 full hours not a single signal reached Earth. No heartbeat, no carrier tone, nothing. In previous instances of signal loss there had always been a trace: drifted orientation, weakened signal strength, solar flare interference. But this time the signal didn't weaken. It just vanished. As though Voyager had left the known electromagnetic spectrum entirely, and just as inexplicably as it disappeared, it returned. Same position, same frequency, same power, but different data. When it came back online, timestamps in the transmission had reset. Internal clocks on the probe now referenced a time origin that didn't match Earth's or its own. The transmission resumed in a new pattern, structured, symmetrical, and accompanied by the same musical tone as before. But now, enhanced. As if whatever was behind it had refined the signal during the blackout. The quiet wasn't a failure, it was a transformation. Inside NASA's Deep Space Network, the global system of massive antennas used to track distant spacecraft, engineers quietly began rerouting resources. Antennas in Madrid, California, and Canberra were all realigned to give Voyager 1 uninterrupted 24-hour observation. Nothing was officially announced, but internally everything changed. Datasets were encrypted, access logs became restricted, and high-level meetings were moved offline. This wasn't routine. This was response. At the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, archived telemetry was pulled from backup. Engineers who hadn't worked on the mission in decades were brought back in, and over time it became clear that they weren't just trying to recover Voyager's systems. They were trying to interpret something new, something no one had ever seen before. The question that circulated behind closed doors wasn't about a malfunction. It was this. Did Voyager 1 encounter something conscious? And if so, what else might be out there? Voyager 1 was built with technology that by today's standards is primitive. Its memory is minuscule. Its transmission rate is glacial. It cannot steer. It cannot see. And yet, despite all of that, it became the first object in human history to leave the sun's influence and enter true interstellar space. That alone should have been its final act. But now, with this final transmission, something has shifted. A probe once considered a relic of the past may have just become the key to our future. What if Voyager didn't just send one last message? What if it brought one back? The implications are staggering. Because if the final signal wasn't just a technical anomaly, if it was an encoded reply, a payload of knowledge, or worse, a question, then the final transmission of Voyager 1 isn't just a goodbye. It's an invitation. And the world is not ready for the answer. For decades, Voyager 1 has been our ambassador to the stars, a lonely machine adrift in the vast silence beyond our sun's reach. It was never supposed to last this long. It was never supposed to speak again. And yet, in its final breath of signal, it may have said more than we ever expected. This wasn't a system failure, it wasn't a glitch, it wasn't noise. What Voyager 1 sent back was structured, deliberate, and above all, intelligent. Not in the way we define intelligence, but in the way the universe whispers its deepest truths, through symmetry, resonance, silence, and sound. Something reached out through that signal, something precise, something that knew when and where to wait, something that used our own machine, our own creation to speak. And what it said wasn't an answer, it was a question. Are you ready to listen? A transmission doesn't have to be loud to be world-changing. Sometimes all it takes is a frequency perfectly tuned and a moment of silence that feels too calculated to be natural. Voyager 1 may be on its way to darkness, powered by fading plutonium and outdated memory chips. But in that darkness, it might have touched something we were never meant to find. Or was E. Something that was waiting for us to arrive. This wasn't just a message from a machine. It may have been our first message from something else. If this revelation gave you chills, if you believe there's more behind Voyager's final signal than we're being told, then don't stay silent. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and join us as we explore the evidence NASA won't put in their press releases. And tell us in the comments, was Voyager's final transmission a farewell, or the beginning of something far more profound?